I was addressing things as the supervisor. There will be no comments. There will be anything. It will be me addressing you guys, telling you what's going on the township.
In our CBA, that's our collective bargaining agreement. That's our union contract. So it comes with the seat. That's what people are not saying. I didn't make this up. I didn't just create.
Tiffany Henyard, once regarded as an unstoppable force within Dalton's political environment, now finds herself entrenched at the core of an escalating investigation that is generating tremors throughout her inner circle and beyond. Her name has been prominently displayed across news headlines, albeit not for the reasons she had desired. Allegations pertaining to corruption, financial misconduct, and abuses of power continue accumulating, and the scrutiny regarding her questionable activities intensifies daily. The very individuals who previously stood unwaveringly beside her, including her own partner, are now distancing themselves at an astonishingly rapid pace, faster than anyone could have foreseen. According to insider reports, even the father of her child is collaborating with legal authorities, providing crucial details that possess the potential to produce devastating ramifications for Tiffany's future. The federal government is purportedly conducting a comprehensive investigation into her affairs, and those whom she once depended upon for protection are now assisting law enforcement in their pursuit of justice. In order to fully comprehend how Tiffany's empire began to unravel, it is essential to scrutinize the trajectory that led her to power, a journey characterized not only by ambition but by a meticulously curated image of invincibility. Throughout her tenure in office, Tiffany strategically surrounded herself with staunchly loyal allies, individuals whose devotion to her leadership appeared unwavering. However, many of these figures bore their own questionable reputations, forming an elaborate network composed of enablers and fall guys, individuals she had deliberately positioned as scapegoats, who she assumed would absorb the blame should any illicit operations come to light. Nevertheless, as the inquiry into her murky dealings gained momentum, Tiffany found herself unable to withstand the mounting pressure. Once adept at manipulating public perception and evading accountability, she attempted to withdraw from media attention, hoping the controversy would dissipate with time. However, the Federal Bureau of Investigation was allegedly intensifying its probe, making it increasingly difficult for her to remain out of the spotlight. The moment she endeavored to fade from view, it became evident that her grip on power was beginning to weaken. Those upon whom she relied were no longer willing to shield her from the repercussions of her alleged misconduct. One by one, her supposed defenders began defecting, and the walls she had meticulously constructed around herself started to disintegrate. Perhaps the most staggering betrayal emerged from her own partner, Kamal Woods. Kamal, Tiffany's long-term romantic companion, was not merely linked to her personally, but was deeply entangled in her business affairs, rendering his role an integral facet of the ongoing investigation. While he had been publicly depicted as a loyal supporter, his newfound willingness to cooperate with investigators suggested that his involvement in Tiffany's alleged schemes was far more intricate than initially assumed. Kamal was not a passive participant within Tiffany's sphere of influence. He was an essential operative. He had even been appointed as the director of her cancer foundation, a decision that had already aroused suspicions. The foundation, ostensibly created to provide support for breast cancer patients, was now facing intense scrutiny. Investigators sought to determine whether the organization had been a legitimate charitable institution or merely a publicity maneuver. On the very day of the foundation's official launch, it received a substantial donation, further amplifying speculation regarding its true intent. As authorities meticulously examined its financial records, an increasing number of individuals began suspecting that the foundation was merely a facade for less benevolent endeavors. This revelation, coupled with the disintegration of Tiffany's support network, placed her in an exceedingly precarious predicament, leaving her with no sanctuary. Once perceived as untouchable, Tiffany was now confronting the grim reality that her political empire teetered on the brink of collapse. With federal authorities encroaching, her previously steadfast allies defecting, and public sentiment demanding accountability, the fundamental question remained: how much longer could she evade the repercussions of her alleged transgressions? The investigation further uncovered grave concerns regarding her potential misuse of public resources. Reports suggested that she had redirected taxpayer funds to finance a trip beyond Dalton's jurisdiction, purportedly to promote her foundation, an act that effectively transformed public funds into a vehicle for advancing her personal ambitions. Even more egregiously, She had allegedly utilized taxpayer money to compensate her employees, including Kamal Woods, who played a central role in her questionable dealings. Despite the escalating number of red flags, Tiffany persisted in channeling public funds into her foundation, operating under the illusion that she remained impervious to scrutiny. However, the intervention of federal authorities marked a turning point. Federal investigators arrived with subpoenas, demanding access to pivotal documents pertaining to her financial transactions. Kamal, who had been drawing a paycheck from Tiffany's dubious foundation, was exposed for having secured a highly lucrative position within Thornton Township, receiving a salary exceeding $100,000, an amount most residents of Dalton could scarcely fathom earning. The investigation took an unforeseen direction when Kamal's name appeared within the subpoenas, signaling that authorities were broadening their probe beyond Tiffany to include the financial dealings of those within her immediate inner circle. Tiffany herself was served with 2 subpoenas, one of which focused on her private business transactions. Investigators unearthed an intricate web of enterprises, each as murky as her political dealings. Among these enterprises were a restaurant and a property management firm, both of which raised severe concerns regarding their legitimacy. One particularly appalling case involved a tenant who lost their residence in 2019 due to unsafe living conditions, including a building infested with mold and plagued by persistent leaks. Clear evidence that Tiffany's business practices deviated significantly from ethical standards. As the inquiry delved deeper into Tiffany's affairs, it became increasingly apparent that her empire had been erected upon a foundation of deceit and financial manipulation. What rendered her downfall even more striking was the reality that the very individuals she had relied upon for protection were now assisting law enforcement in their quest for justice. Tiffany's long-standing pattern of cutting corners, leveraging power for personal gain, and prioritizing self-interest over the well-being of her constituents was now catching up with her in ways she had never anticipated. She may have once believed herself to be invincible, but the accumulating evidence against her suggested otherwise. With federal investigators closing in, her tenure of unchecked authority was rapidly approaching its conclusion. The most astonishing betrayal of all stemmed from the father of her child, previously perceived as a steadfast figure in her life, but now reportedly collaborating with authorities. His willingness to divulge information could potentially serve as the decisive factor in dismantling Tiffany's carefully constructed illusion of power and dominance. As the investigation progressed, further revelations emerged, exposing more of Tiffany's closely guarded secrets and constructing an incriminating depiction of a leader who had consistently prioritized self-interest above her obligations to public service. The once devoted allies who had helped sustain her control were now abandoning her, ensuring that law enforcement possessed the necessary evidence to hold her accountable. Tiffany Henyard's story serves as a cautionary narrative illustrating the dangers of corruption and unchecked ambition, a sobering reminder that even those who perceive themselves as untouchable can ultimately be brought down by the very individuals they once depended upon. What initially appeared as an unstoppable political ascent was now unraveling into a scandalous and deeply humiliating decline. With each new revelation, Tiffany's fate appeared increasingly sealed. As she braced herself to confront the inevitable consequences of her alleged misconduct, one certainty remained. The subsequent chapter of this ongoing saga was bound to be even more explosive. The full magnitude of her purported offenses would soon be brought to light, and with federal authorities tightening their grip, former confidants testifying against her, and her once loyal inner circle imploding, Tiffany Henyard's reign seemed destined to reach its dramatic and unavoidable conclusion.
Damage, and then it leaked one into my kitchen, and the window sill leaked in my daughter's room.
Except they weren't. Enter activist David Lowry, who called Dalton directly. Suddenly, the house deemed livable on September 3rd became unfit for occupancy on October 15th. Lowry's theory?
As the inquiry into Tiffany Henyard's alleged corruption intensified, an increasing number of individuals stepped forward to reveal her actions, a turn of events she should have foreseen, given the controversies that had surrounded her administration from its very inception. Merely 6 months after assuming the role of supervisor of Thornton Township, the Federal Bureau of Investigation deepened its probe into her operations, recognizing the necessity of comprehensively understanding her financial and business dealings. Federal Authorities formally demanded access to all records concerning her political fundraising efforts, charitable foundation, and township management, an unmistakable indication that her financial activities had already been placed under rigorous scrutiny even prior to the escalation of the investigation. However, well before federal agents intensified their inquiry, Tiffany had already been met with escalating criticism from within her own ranks, particularly from members of her so-called Dream Team, a group she had personally assembled to assist in governing the township. Tiffany had likely presumed that this hand-picked administration would remain steadfast in loyalty and cooperation. However, the reality deviated significantly from her expectations. Township trustees Tiana Beller and Jason House, alongside village clerk Allison Key, were initially positioned to be among her closest and most supportive allies. Nevertheless, they swiftly transformed into some of her most outspoken adversaries, refusing to ignore the unethical and highly questionable decisions she continued to make. What was originally intended to be a harmonious coalition in governance rapidly devolved into an ongoing crisis for Tiffany, as the very individuals she had personally chosen to bolster her leadership instead began challenging her authority and revealing her dubious activities. The mounting tensions only deepened as these trustees, who had once been appointed for their perceived allegiance, started collaborating with the village board to initiate legal action against Tiffany, formally accusing her of grave conflicts of interest. Their principal concerns centered on the growing body of evidence suggesting that she had been leveraging her position not to serve the people of Dalton, but rather to advance her own personal and financial ambitions. This legal battle, which erupted a mere 6 months into her tenure, starkly illuminated the deep divisions within her administration and solidified the ever-expanding opposition against her. Yet, instead of taking accountability for her decisions or addressing the serious concerns raised by the trustees, Tiffany persisted in sidestepping responsibility, further exacerbating the fractures within her administration.